Story number 1. Shadows of Troll A. I've always been drawn to the enigmatic and the unexplained, the places where reality blurs with the supernatural. So when the opportunity arose to document the haunting tales surrounding the Troll A oil platform in the North Sea, I couldn't resist. Known as one of the largest oil rigs in the world, Troll A stood as a colossal monument to human ambition. Yet, beneath its steel exterior and towering presence lay stories that whispered of darkness and fear. Arriving in Norway during the bleak, overcast days of late autumn, the North Sea stretched out before me, a vast expanse of gray waves crashing against the rigid structure of Troll A. The rig loomed against the horizon, its massive legs piercing the tumultuous waters, anchored firmly to the ocean floor. The air was thick with salt and the ever-present chill, a reminder of the unforgiving nature of the sea. My guide for this expedition was Erik Larsen, a seasoned diver who had spent years maintaining the rig's underwater infrastructure. His weathered face and steely eyes spoke of countless hours spent beneath the waves, navigating the labyrinthine tunnels and confined spaces of Troll A. As we boarded the vessel that would take us closer to the rig, Erik shared the stories that had drawn me here. People say they see shadows moving beneath the rig, he began, his voice low and measured. Large, dark figures swimming around the base. Some divers have reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, like something's watching them from the depths. I listened intently, my recorder capturing every word. The tales were chilling, divers experiencing inexplicable fears, encountering strange creatures that defied explanation, and witnessing shadows that seemed to possess a life of their own. Skeptical yet intrigued, I was determined to uncover the truth behind these eerie accounts. As our boat approached Troll A, the sky grew darker, the clouds heavy with impending storms. The rig's lights flickered intermittently, casting ghostly reflections on the rough seas. We donned our diving gear, the cold water biting at our skin as we descended into the depths. The underwater world of Troll A was a maze of metal and machinery, the remnants of human engineering intertwined with the relentless power of the ocean. The first night beneath the waves was uneventful, filled with the monotony of routine inspections and maintenance tasks. But as midnight approached, the atmosphere changed. The water grew colder, the darkness more oppressive. It was then that I first heard it, a faint, distant whisper, barely audible over the hum of the rig's generators. I turned to Erik, who gave me a knowing look before continuing his work. Minutes later, the whispers intensified, transforming into mournful cries that echoed through the tunnels. My heart raced as I followed the sound, my flashlight cutting through the inky blackness. The cries led me to a secluded chamber, the walls slick with algae and the remnants of forgotten equipment. There, amidst the debris, I saw them, massive, shadowy figures gliding effortlessly through the water, their forms indistinct yet undeniably present. Frozen in fear, I watched as the shadows moved with an unnatural grace, their movements synchronized like a dark ballet. Erik approached cautiously, his expression grim. "These aren't natural creatures," he whispered. "There's something otherworldly about them." I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the shadows were aware of my presence, watching me with unseen eyes. The temperature dropped further, my breath visible in the frigid water. Suddenly, one of the shadows turned towards me, its form shifting and swirling, as if trying to communicate. I reached out, my hand trembling, but the figure dissipated before I could make contact. Desperate to leave, I followed Erik back to the surface, the echoes of the shadows lingering in my mind. The next day, we interviewed other divers who had encountered the mysterious phenomena. Each account was eerily similar, feelings of being watched, sightings of large, dark shapes beneath the rig, and the unsettling sounds that accompanied these experiences. One diver, a young man named Lars, shared his harrowing encounter. "I was checking the main pipeline when I saw it, this enormous shadow moving just beyond the edge of my flashlight. I tried to swim closer, but the feeling of fear was paralyzing. It was like something was pulling me back, keeping me from getting too close." As the days passed, the stories only grew more intense. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation, navigation systems went haywire, and a pervasive sense of unease settled over the crew. It was as if the rig itself was alive, haunted by the spirits of those who had perished in past accidents. The whispers became a constant presence, a reminder of the fragility of life and the unforgiving power of the sea. Determined to capture definitive evidence, I decided to spend a night alone on Troll A, documenting the rig's nocturnal activities. Equipped with cameras and audio recorders, I settled into a secluded corner of the platform, the sounds of the night enveloping me. The vast expanse of the North Sea stretched out around me, the darkness broken only by the occasional flicker of lights from passing ships. As midnight approached, the familiar whispers began, growing louder and more distinct. I sat in silence, listening as the voices intertwined with the sounds of the ocean. Suddenly, the lights around me flickered, and the temperature dropped sharply. I felt a presence, an unseen force pressing in on all sides. My camera captured shadows moving at the periphery of my vision, and my recorder picked up the soft, sorrowful moans of the spirits. In the midst of the darkness, a single shadow solidified into a recognizable form, a diver in a tattered suit, his face obscured by shadows. He floated towards me, his movements slow and deliberate. "Remember us," he whispered, his voice echoing in the empty space. "We are still here." Tears welled in my eyes as I reached out, desperate to offer solace. "I will remember your stories," I replied, my voice cracking with emotion. The shadow nodded, a gesture of gratitude before fading into the darkness. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a profound sense of peace. The whispers subsided, leaving behind a serene silence that felt like a gentle embrace. When morning broke, I emerged from the rig, exhausted but fulfilled. The haunting presence that had plagued Troll for years had finally found a semblance of peace, thanks to my efforts to document and honor their memories. The experiences I had captured were more than just ghostly apparitions, they were echoes of lives cut short, stories that deserved to be told and remembered. Back in the mainland, I compiled my findings into a comprehensive documentary titled Echoes of Gorilla 4. The film showcased not only the rig's dark history but also the emotional testimonies of those who had encountered the supernatural phenomena. Viewers were captivated by the raw emotion and the haunting visuals, many expressing a newfound respect for the forgotten souls of Troll. The documentary sparked conversations about the importance of remembering and honoring those who had suffered in silence, the balance between human ambition and the unforgiving forces of nature. It became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of memory. Whenever I think back to those nights on Troll, I'm reminded of the thin line between the natural and the supernatural, the way our stories linger long after we're gone. The spirits of the lost workers continue to whisper their tales, a haunting reminder that some echoes, no matter how faint, are powerful enough to transcend the boundaries of life and death. In the end, my journey to the Glomar Explorer was more than just an investigation. It was a voyage of empathy and understanding, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a reminder that some places hold memories too powerful to be forgotten. By giving these lost souls a voice, I not only honored their memories but also found a deeper connection to my own humanity, ensuring that their suffering was never in vain. Whenever I sit down to write, I think back to those nights aboard the rig, the whispers of the past guiding my pen, reminding me that some stories are worth telling, no matter how dark they may be. Story number 2. Whispers of the Glomar Explorer. I've always been captivated by the sea's hidden depths, the mysteries that lie beneath its surface, and the stories that emerge from its darkest corners. So when I received an assignment to investigate the abandoned Glomar Explorer oil rig in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, I couldn't resist. Known not only for its engineering marvels but also for its murky past tied to a secretive CIA project, the rig promised more than just a journalistic endeavor. It was an invitation to uncover the unknown. Arriving at the nearest port town of Honolulu, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The Glomar Explorer, once a symbol of human ingenuity and covert operations, now stood as a ghostly silhouette against the horizon, its skeletal structure a stark contrast to the serene blue of the ocean. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the scent of saltwater and the lingering memories of a bygone era. My host for the trip was Captain Elena Ramirez, a seasoned mariner with a reputation for navigating the most treacherous waters. Her weathered face and steely eyes spoke of countless voyages, each etched with stories of survival and the sea's unforgiving nature. "Welcome aboard," she greeted me as we stepped onto the ferry that would take us to the Glomar Explorer. Her voice was steady, yet there was an undercurrent of something unspoken, a hint of the rig's haunted reputation. "Thank you, Captain. I'm eager to get started," I replied, trying to mask my nervousness. As the ferry sliced through the calm waters, the Glomar Explorer grew larger, its imposing frame casting long shadows over the deck. The rig had been decommissioned years ago, left to the mercy of the ocean and time. But it wasn't just the abandonment that intrigued me, it was the countless reports from fishermen and maintenance workers about inexplicable phenomena, chills that had no source, doors slamming shut on their own, and eerie whispers that echoed through the empty corridors. We arrived just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The rig loomed before us, its lights dimmed but still flickering intermittently, as if struggling to stay awake. Captain Ramirez led me to the main deck, where remnants of the rig's operational days lay scattered, rusted machinery, broken equipment, and faded signs that once directed workers to their stations. Most of the areas are off-limits due to safety concerns, Captain Ramirez explained, her gaze fixed on the horizon. But Room 217 is open for investigation. That's where most of the reports originate. Room 217. The number alone sent a shiver down my spine, evoking images of the infamous Room 217 from the Stanley Hotel that inspired Stephen King's The Shining. Determined to uncover the truth, I followed the captain to the designated room. The door creaked ominously as we pushed it open, revealing a space frozen in time. The furnishings were outdated, with heavy curtains drawn shut and a thick layer of dust covering every surface. I set up my camera and audio equipment, the silence of the room amplifying every small sound, the distant hum of the ocean, the rustling of my own clothing. As night fell, the rig transformed. The once bustling corridors now echoed with an unsettling stillness, broken only by the occasional drip of water or the groan of metal shifting in the wind. I decided to conduct a nighttime exploration, hoping to capture any signs of paranormal activity. Armed with my flashlight and recorder, I ventured into the bowels of the rig. The corridors were narrow and claustrophobic, the walls adorned with faded maps and old photographs of workers who had long since left. The deeper I went, the colder the air became, a stark contrast to the humid night outside. Suddenly, I heard it, a faint whisper, almost inaudible, coming from the darkness ahead. I paused, straining to listen. The whispering grew louder, forming indistinct words that sent chills down my spine. "Remember us," the voices murmured, their tone filled with sorrow and longing. Heart-pounding, I followed the sound, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The whispers led me to a large storage room, its doors hanging loosely on their hinges. As I stepped inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, my breath visible in the icy air. The room was cluttered with old tools and equipment, but what caught my attention was a solitary rocking chair in the corner, moving gently back and forth as if someone had just left. I approached cautiously, the whispers now a chorus of voices surrounding me. My recorder captured every sound, the soft creak of the chair, the distant moans of the sea, and the persistent whispering that seemed to come from all directions. Suddenly, the room was plunged into darkness as my flashlight flickered and died. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my backup light, but it only illuminated a fleeting shadow that darted across the room before disappearing. The oppressive silence returned, heavier than before, and the whispers resumed, now louder and more urgent. I heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty corridors. My heart raced as I backed away, but the room seemed to stretch infinitely, trapping me in a nightmarish loop of sound and shadow. The whispers grew into anguished cries, the voices of workers who had perished in the tragic explosion that had sealed the rig's fate. Desperate to escape, I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a force that sent me crashing into the wall. The air was thick with the presence of countless souls, their collective sorrow weighing heavily on me. I screamed, my voice swallowed by the vast emptiness, but the cries of the spirits persisted, their pain etched into every sound wave. In a moment of clarity, I realized that the spirits were not malevolent but trapped, their lives cut short by a disaster that left them yearning for remembrance and peace. "I'm here to listen," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Tell me your stories." The temperature seemed to rise slightly, and the whispers softened, transforming into coherent voices. One by one, the spirits began to recount their tales, stories of hope, of dreams shattered by the explosion, and of the longing to be remembered. Their words painted a vivid picture of life on the rig, the camaraderie among workers, and the abrupt end that left so many souls wandering the abandoned structure. As I listened, a sense of purpose filled me. This was more than just an investigation, it was a mission to honor their memories and ensure that their stories were not forgotten. I documented every detail, capturing the raw emotion and the haunting presence that permeated the rig. Days turned into nights as I delved deeper into the mysteries of the Glomar Explorer. I interviewed more fishermen and former workers, each with their own accounts of strange phenomena and ghostly apparitions. The consistent themes of being watched, hearing unexplained noises, and encountering shadowy figures reinforced the rig's haunted reputation. One evening, as I sat in room 217 reviewing my recordings, the whispers returned, softer yet more insistent. The room felt colder, and the air thick with anticipation. Suddenly, a figure materialized before me, a man in a hard hat and safety vest, his face etched with sorrow. "Remember us," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "Tell our stories." Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded, understanding the depth of their plea. I vowed to share their experiences, to bring light to the tragedies that had occurred, and to give a voice to those who could no longer speak for themselves. The final night on the rig was unlike any other. Armed with my equipment and a newfound sense of determination, I conducted a comprehensive recording session, capturing the essence of the spirits' anguish and their longing for remembrance. As midnight approached, the atmosphere shifted, the oppressive silence lifted, replaced by a serene calm that enveloped the rig. The blue light that had first drawn me to the Glomar Explorer began to pulse gently, its eerie glow softening into a comforting hue. The whispers transformed into harmonious voices, their sorrow giving way to gratitude. The spirits began to fade, their presence no longer a haunting reminder but a peaceful farewell. "Thank you," they whispered collectively, their voices intertwining in a melody of closure and peace. "Remember us." As dawn broke, the rig stood silent once more, the haunting presence lifted, leaving behind a sense of fulfillment and purpose. I knew that my mission was complete. The stories of the lost souls had been heard, their memories preserved. Returning to Honolulu, I compiled my findings into a comprehensive documentary titled Whispers of the Glomar Explorer. The film not only showcased the rig's dark history but also highlighted the emotional testimonies of the spirits, blending raw footage with the heartfelt accounts of those who had interacted with the haunted structure. When Whispers of the Glomar Explorer was released, it garnered attention from both the maritime community and paranormal enthusiasts. Viewers were moved by the authentic emotion and the compelling narrative, many expressing a newfound respect for the forgotten souls of the rig. The documentary not only shed light on the tragic events that had transpired but also sparked conversations about the importance of remembering and honoring those who had suffered in silence. The Glomar Explorer remains a symbol of human ambition and the tragic consequences that can follow. Its legacy is now intertwined with the stories of the spirits who once worked there, their whispers a reminder of the lives lost and the importance of remembrance. Whenever I think back to those nights aboard the rig, I'm reminded of the power of empathy and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. In the end, my journey to the Glomar Explorer was more than just an investigation. It was a voyage of understanding, a testament to the importance of memory, and a reminder that some places hold memories too powerful to be forgotten. By giving these lost souls a voice, I not only honored their memories but also found a deeper connection to my own humanity, ensuring that their suffering was never in vain. Whenever I sit down to write, I think back to those nights on the abandoned rig, the whispers of the past guiding my pen, reminding me that some stories are worth telling, no matter how dark they may be. Story number 3. Echoes of Gorilla 4. I've always been fascinated by the sea's unforgiving embrace, the way it hides secrets beneath its restless waves. So when the opportunity arose to investigate the abandoned Gorilla 4 oil rig in the East Malaysia Sea, I couldn't resist. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering forgotten tragedies, the rig's dark history and the eerie tales from nearby fishermen promised a story worth telling. Arriving in the small coastal town of Lumut, I felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on me. The town, once bustling with workers from the rig, now seemed deserted, its streets quiet under the heavy humidity of the tropical climate. Locals eyed me with a mix of curiosity and unease, their whispers hinting at the rig's haunted reputation. The journey to Gorilla 4 was uneventful, the ferry slicing through the calm waters under a sky gradually darkening with approaching night. As the silhouette of the rig emerged against the horizon, a chill ran down my spine. The massive steel structure stood like a ghostly sentinel, its lights long extinguished, rust creeping up its towering frame. Memories of the 2010 explosion, the blinding fire, the deafening roar, and the screams of those who didn't survive, flashed through my mind. Stepping onto the rig, the air felt thick with despair. The once vibrant hub of activity was now a decaying monument to human folly. I set up my equipment in the control room, the heart of the rig, where the explosion had been most devastating. The walls were scarred by flames, and broken equipment lay scattered like the remnants of shattered lives. As midnight approached, the oppressive silence was broken by the distant sound of waves crashing against the rig's base. I reviewed my notes, recounting the stories I had gathered. Fishermen spoke of unexplained phenomena, shadows moving against the current, moaning sounds echoing through the empty corridors, and a pervasive feeling of being watched. Some even claimed to see figures standing on the rig's highest platforms, staring out into the dark sea. Determined to capture evidence, I ventured deeper into the rig, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Each step echoed ominously, the sounds amplified in the vast, empty spaces. The temperature seemed to drop as I navigated the narrow hallways, the air growing colder with each passing moment. In the engine room, the epicenter of the disaster, I felt an overwhelming presence. The machinery, though silent, seemed to hum with residual energy, the shadows dancing on the walls as if alive. I set up my audio recorder, hoping to capture any paranormal activity. Moments later, a faint moaning sound filled the room, growing louder and more sorrowful. My heart raced as I followed the sound, my flashlight revealing nothing but the empty expanse. Suddenly, the sound stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a force that sent me sprawling to the floor. Panic surged through me as I struggled to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers returned, softer this time, like distant voices carried on the wind. "Remember us," the voices echoed, their tone filled with anguish and longing. I grabbed my notebook, trying to make sense of the words. The whispers grew louder, forming coherent sentences that sent shivers down my spine. "We are still here," they murmured. "Help us find peace." Desperate to escape, I searched the room for another exit, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the equipment. The temperature continued to drop, my breath visible in the frigid air. The whispers turned into mournful cries, the voices of those who had lost their lives in the explosion, their pain palpable in the oppressive atmosphere. Just as I was about to give up hope, a figure materialized before me, a man in a hard hat, his face twisted with sorrow. "You must remember us," he pleaded, his eyes hollow with despair. "Our stories must be told." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. "I will," I whispered, my voice barely audible. The figure reached out a hand, his touch icy and lifeless. "Thank you," he said, his voice fading as he dissolved into the shadows. The door creaked open, and I stumbled out into the night, gasping for breath. The oppressive silence lifted, replaced by the gentle sound of waves and the distant call of seabirds. Shaken but resolute, I returned to the control room to gather my belongings. As I packed my equipment, I noticed the wall covered in old photographs, faces frozen in time, eyes staring blankly into the abyss. Each photo was a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded here, their stories yearning to be heard. Leaving Gorilla 4 behind, I felt a profound sense of duty. The spirits of the lost workers had reached out, their voices echoing through the rig, urging me to remember their suffering and ensure their stories were not forgotten. I knew this was more than just a journalistic pursuit, it was a mission to honor their memories and bring closure to restless souls. Back in Lumet, I began the arduous task of piecing together the narrative of Gorilla 4. I interviewed more fishermen, each recounting their own encounters with the rig's haunting presence. The consistent themes of being watched, hearing moaning sounds, and witnessing shadowy figures painted a vivid picture of a place still tormented by its past. As I compiled my findings, I felt a connection to the spirits I had encountered. Their pain resonated with me, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of tragedy. I decided to create a documentary, blending my personal experiences with the testimonies of others, to bring the story of Gorilla 4 to a wider audience. The process was both therapeutic and terrifying. Revisiting the rig in my mind's eye, I relived the moments of fear and empathy, capturing the essence of the spirit's anguish and longing. Each interview, each piece of evidence, added depth to the narrative, weaving a tapestry of sorrow and resilience. When the documentary, Echoes of Gorilla 4, was finally released, it garnered attention from both the maritime community and those fascinated by the paranormal. Viewers were moved by the raw emotion and the haunting visuals, many expressing a newfound respect for the forgotten souls of the rig. The film not only shed light on the dark history of Gorilla 4, but also sparked conversations about the importance of remembering and honoring those who had suffered in silence. In the months that followed, I received countless messages from viewers who had experienced similar hauntings or who felt a connection to the spirits of Gorilla 4. The documentary became a beacon of remembrance, a tribute to the lives lost and a call to never overlook the marginalized voices that echo through time. Whenever I think back to that night on Gorilla 4, I'm reminded of the power of empathy and the importance of storytelling. The spirits had reached out to me, trusting me to carry their stories forward. By honoring their memories, I not only helped them find peace, but also found a deeper connection to my own humanity. Gorilla 4 remains a symbol of both human ambition and the tragic consequences that can follow. Its legacy is now intertwined with the stories of the spirits who once worked there, their whispers a reminder of the lives lost and the importance of remembrance. Whenever I pass by the East Malaysia Sea, I feel a lingering presence, a connection to the past and a reminder that some echoes, no matter how faint, are powerful enough to transcend the boundaries of life and death. In the end, my journey to Gorilla 4 was more than just an investigation. It was a voyage of empathy and understanding, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a reminder that some places hold memories too powerful to be forgotten. By giving these lost souls a voice, I not only honored their memories, but also found a deeper connection to my own humanity, ensuring that their suffering was never in vain. Whenever I sit down to write, I think back to those nights aboard the abandoned rig, the whispers of the past guiding my pen, reminding me that some stories are worth telling, no matter how dark they may be. Story number 4. Echoes of Brent Spar. I've always been drawn to the sea's vast, uncharted mysteries, the places where the horizon blurs and the unknown whispers through the waves. So when I received an assignment to document the abandoned Brent Spar platform in the North Sea, I felt an irresistible pull. The Brent Spar, once a bustling hub for oil extraction, had been decommissioned and left to the relentless forces of nature. But it wasn't just the isolation that intrigued me, it was the countless reports from passing sailors about eerie sounds emanating from the derelict structure. Footsteps echoing through empty corridors, the clanging of metal where no one should be, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering the unexplained, I knew this was the story I needed. The journey to Brent Spar was uneventful, the vessel cutting through the cold, gray waters under a sky heavy with impending rain. The North Sea, with its tumultuous waves and unforgiving winds, set the perfect backdrop for the mystery I was about to explore. As we approached the platform, the first signs of its abandonment became evident. Rusted metalwork jutted out from the water, and the once vibrant colors of safety signs had faded to a dull, lifeless hue. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay, a stark reminder of the rig's forgotten past. My host for the trip was Captain Lars Jensen, a seasoned mariner who had spent decades navigating these treacherous waters. His withered face and steely eyes spoke of countless nights spent battling storms and solitude. "Brent Spar's been a ghost for years," he said, his voice gravelly from years at sea. "But the locals still talk about the sounds. Footsteps, metal scraping, like something or someone still around." I nodded, feeling a chill despite the protective layers I wore. "What do you make of it?" Captain Jensen shrugged, pulling out a thermos of black coffee. "Hard to say. Some say it's just the wind playing tricks, others believe it's the spirits of those who lost their lives here. I've seen things out there I can't explain." We anchored near the base of the platform as dusk began to settle, the sky turning a deep shade of indigo. The first attempt to board was met with resistance. The gangway was loose, creaking ominously as I stepped onto the cold metal. The platform loomed above me, its skeletal structure casting long shadows that seemed to dance with the fading light. I set up my camera, ensuring every creak and groan was captured, determined to uncover the truth behind the legends. The interior of Brent Spar was a labyrinth of narrow corridors and cavernous rooms, each one telling a silent story of its former life. The air was stale, heavy with the remnants of machinery and the ocean's relentless assault. As I ventured deeper, the sounds Captain Jensen mentioned began to emerge. At first, they were faint, a distant echo of footsteps, the sporadic clanging of metal against metal. I paused, listening intently. The sound seemed to move with me, coming from different directions, impossible to locate. I reached what was once the main control room, now a ghostly shell of its former self. The control panels were covered in rust, screens long since darkened. I set up my equipment, capturing the eerie stillness. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, my breath visible in the chilly air. The footsteps grew louder, more deliberate, echoing off the metal walls. I swung my flashlight around, the beam cutting through the darkness, but there was nothing, no one, in sight. A shiver ran down my spine as the sounds continued, accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible laughter. It was a hollow, haunting sound that sent my heart racing. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The response was immediate, a loud crash that reverberated through the platform, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against metal. I followed the noises, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The sounds led me to the storage bay, a vast space filled with old equipment and forgotten tools. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. As I scanned the area, I noticed something, or rather, someone, at the far end of the bay. A fleeting glimpse of a figure, barely visible, gliding across the room. I froze, unable to tear my eyes away. The figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving me in stunned silence. Gathering my courage, I approached the spot, my heart pounding in my chest. The temperature remained unnaturally cold, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the distant sounds of the sea. I reached out, touching the cold metal of an old tool rack, hoping to dispel the lingering unease. As I did, a sudden gust of wind swept through the bay, causing the doors to slam shut with a deafening bang. The sounds intensified, the footsteps now accompanied by anguished cries that seemed to echo the platform's tragic past. Desperate to find answers, I decided to investigate the lower levels of the rig, where maintenance work had been done. The descent was treacherous, the metal stairs slippery and unstable. As I navigated the narrow corridors, the whispers grew louder, the voices blending into a cacophony of sorrow and despair. The air was thick with the scent of oil and rust, a suffocating reminder of the rig's long-abandoned state. I reached the maintenance room, a cramped space filled with old machinery and scattered tools. Setting up my equipment, I began recording, determined to capture any paranormal activity. The room was eerily silent, the only sound the distant hum of the ocean's waves. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a cold breeze swept through the room. I turned my flashlight towards the entrance, the beam catching a fleeting shadow that moved swiftly across the floor. My heart raced as the temperature dropped further, my breath forming visible puffs in the frigid air. The sounds intensified, the footsteps now accompanied by a deep, resonant growl. I felt a presence behind me, the sensation of being watched growing stronger with each passing moment. Swallowing my fear, I spun around, the flashlight illuminating nothing but empty space. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice shaky. The response was immediate, a loud, guttural scream that echoed through the room, shaking the very foundations of the rig. I stumbled back, my mind reeling from the intensity of the experience. The equipment around me began to tremble, objects shifting as if moved by unseen hands. Desperate to escape, I made my way back to the main control room, the sounds of chaos following me every step of the way. As I reached the control room, the door slammed shut, trapping me inside. The blue light that had initially drawn me to the platform began to pulse violently, casting an otherworldly glow across the room. The voices converged into a single, overwhelming chant, an unending plea for remembrance and release. I felt a hand on my shoulder, the touch icy and lifeless. "Remember us," the voices echoed, their sorrowful tones filling my mind. "Let our stories be told." Tears welled in my eyes as I realized the depth of their anguish. These spirits were trapped, unable to move on, their lives cut short by the rig's tragic history. Determined to help, I vowed to document their stories, to give them the recognition they so desperately sought. The next morning, exhausted and emotionally drained, I reviewed my footage. The recordings were a blend of inexplicable noises, shadowy apparitions, and the haunting voices of the lost souls of Brent Spar. The evidence was undeniable, a testament to the rig's haunted legacy and the restless spirits that still lingered within its confines. Leaving Brent Spar, I felt a profound sense of responsibility. The stories of those who had lost their lives here needed to be heard, their memories preserved. My article, Echoes of Brent Spar, was published in a renowned maritime journal, shedding light on the rig's dark past and the supernatural phenomena that continued to haunt it. Readers were captivated by the raw emotion and the chilling accounts of my experiences, many expressing a newfound respect for the forgotten souls of Brent Spar. In the months that followed, the stories of Brent Spar's haunting spread beyond the maritime community, sparking discussions about the importance of remembering and honoring those who had suffered in silence. The rig remained a symbol of human ambition and the tragic consequences that can follow, its legacy intertwined with the stories of the spirits who once worked there. Whenever I think back to those nights on Brent Spar, the whispers of the past guide my pen, reminding me that some stories are worth telling, no matter how dark they may be. The experience taught me that empathy and understanding are crucial when delving into the unknown, and that by giving these lost souls a voice, we not only honor their memories but also find a deeper connection to our own humanity. Brent Spar stands as a haunting reminder of the lives lost and the importance of remembrance. Its silent corridors and ghostly echoes continue to inspire awe and fear, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the human spirit's resilience. As I continue my work, I carry with me the lessons learned from Brent Spar, ensuring that their suffering was never in vain and that their stories live on, echoing through time. Story number 5. Whispers of the Blue Flame. I've always been drawn to the sea's mysteries, the untamed depths where light and darkness dance in an eternal embrace. So when I heard about the abandoned oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, known among locals as the Blue Flame, I knew I had to investigate. The stories were chilling, fishermen recounting nights when a strange blue light would emanate from the rig, disappearing the moment their boats approached, leaving behind an oppressive silence. They believed the place was haunted by the souls of workers lost in tragic accidents. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for the paranormal, the Blue Flame beckoned me like a siren's call. Arriving in the small coastal town of Port Lucille, I felt the weight of the Gulf's history pressing down on me. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the salty scent of the ocean and the lingering smell of diesel fuel, a reminder of the rig's once thriving operations. The locals were tight-lipped, their eyes darting nervously as they shared fragmented stories of the rig's dark past. They spoke of accidents, of lives cut short by malfunctioning equipment and harsh weather, and of the restless spirits that now haunted the forsaken structure. Equipped with my camera, audio recorder, and a sturdy flashlight, I boarded the small ferry that would take me to the Blue Flame. The ride was uneventful, the sun dipping below the horizon as twilight gave way to night. As we approached the rig, its skeletal frame loomed against the star-studded sky, the once vibrant lights now darkened, save for a faint, eerie blue glow that pulsed intermittently from its core. Stepping onto the rusted platform, I felt a chill run down my spine. The structure creaked and groaned in the wind, its metal limbs swaying ominously. I made my way to the main deck, where remnants of machinery lay scattered, a testament to the rig's tumultuous history. The blue light was most intense here, casting ghostly shadows that danced along the deck. I set up my equipment, determined to capture any signs of paranormal activity. As midnight approached, the temperature seemed to drop, the air growing heavy with an unseen presence. I began recording, narrating my observations for my documentary. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant roar of the ocean and the intermittent flicker of the blue light. Hours passed with nothing out of the ordinary, the rig's haunting beauty both mesmerizing and unsettling. Just as I was about to call it a night, a faint sound pierced the stillness, a soft, mournful whisper that seemed to come from all around me. I froze, straining to listen. The whispers grew louder, forming indistinct words that sent chills down my spine. Suddenly, the blue light intensified, bathing the deck in an otherworldly glow. Shadows began to coalesce, taking the form of ghostly figures, workers from a bygone era, their faces etched with sorrow and desperation. One figure, a man in a hard hat and safety vest, stepped forward, his eyes hollow and pleading. "Remember us," he whispered, his voice echoing through the night. The air grew colder, and the oppressive silence returned, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. I fumbled with my camera, trying to capture the apparition, but he vanished before the lens could register his presence. Heart-pounding, I decided to explore deeper into the rig, seeking answers and hoping to uncover the truth behind the Blue Flame's haunting. I descended into the lower levels, where the machinery was more advanced and the remnants of the rig's operational days were still visible. The blue light guided my path, illuminating the dark corridors with its eerie glow. As I navigated the labyrinthine passages, the whispers returned, growing louder and more urgent. Figures appeared sporadically, their forms flickering like faulty projections. A woman in a nurse's uniform reached out towards me, her face streaked with tears. "Help us," she pleaded, her voice breaking with emotion. Before I could respond, she dissolved into the shadows, leaving me alone with the haunting sounds of the past. I reached the control room, a place where decisions were made and lives were lost. The blue light was brightest here, emanating from the central console that had once been the heart of the rig's operations. I approached cautiously, my flashlight illuminating the remnants of control panels and broken equipment. As I examined the area, the whispers converged into a cacophony of sorrow and regret. Suddenly, the room was plunged into darkness, the blue light extinguished as if snuffed out by an unseen force. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my flashlight, but the beam was weak, barely cutting through the blackness. The temperature dropped further, my breath visible in the frigid air. I heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty room. A figure materialized before me, the man from earlier, his expression one of profound sadness. "We cannot move on," he declared, his voice resonating with an unearthly power. "You must remember our stories, honor our memories." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes as I realized the depth of their anguish. These spirits were trapped, unable to find peace due to the tragedies they had endured. Determined to help, I began to speak, recounting the stories of the workers and their struggles, promising to share their experiences with the world. As I spoke, the blue light returned, enveloping the room in a soothing glow. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and closure. The spirits smiled faintly, their forms becoming less defined as they began to fade. "Thank you," the man whispered before disappearing entirely, leaving me alone in the serene silence. Exhausted but fulfilled, I made my way back to the deck, the first hints of dawn breaking over the horizon. The blue light had vanished, and the rig stood silent, its haunting presence a reminder of the lives lost and the stories that needed to be told. As I boarded the ferry back to Port Lucille, I felt a profound sense of responsibility, to remember, to honor, and to share the voices of those who had been silenced by tragedy. Months later, my documentary, Echoes of Ecafis Bravo, was released to critical acclaim. Viewers were moved by the raw emotion and the haunting visuals I had captured, many expressing a newfound respect for the forgotten souls of the Gulf. The film not only shed light on the dark history of the rig, but also sparked conversations about the importance of remembering and honoring those who had suffered in silence. The abandoned oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico remains a symbol of both human ambition and the tragic consequences that can follow. Its legacy is now intertwined with the stories of the spirits who once worked there, their whispers a reminder of the lives lost and the importance of remembrance. Whenever I think back to that night, the whispers of the past guide my pen, reminding me that some stories are worth telling, no matter how dark they may be. In the end, my journey to the Blue Flame was more than just an investigation. It was a voyage of empathy and understanding, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a reminder that some places hold memories too powerful to be forgotten. By giving these lost souls a voice, I not only honored their memories, but also found a deeper connection to my own humanity, ensuring that their suffering was never in vain. Whenever I sit down to write, I think back to those nights aboard the Blue Flame, the whispers of the past guiding my pen, reminding me that some stories are worth telling, no matter how dark they may be. Story number 6. Echoes of Deepwater Horizon. I've always been fascinated by places where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, where the remnants of tragedy linger like shadows in the night. So when I heard about the haunted tales surrounding the Deepwater Horizon oil rig in the North Sea, my curiosity was instantly piqued. As a freelance journalist specializing in unsolved mysteries and paranormal phenomena, I saw this as the perfect opportunity to uncover the truth behind the eerie reports that had plagued the rig since the catastrophic explosion in 2010. Arriving in Aberdeen on a gray, overcast morning, the industrial skyline greeted me with its imposing structures and relentless energy. The Deepwater Horizon, once a symbol of human ingenuity and ambition, now stood as a ghostly relic of one of the worst environmental disasters in history. The rig's massive steel framework loomed against the dull sky, its empty windows like vacant eyes staring into the abyss. I met up with Tom, a seasoned maintenance worker who had been on the rig both before and after the explosion. His face bore the lines of someone who had seen too much, and his eyes held a haunted look that spoke volumes without words. "Welcome to the site," Tom said, leading me to a makeshift base camp set up on the mainland. "You're here to hear the stories we've kept to ourselves, huh?" I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I'm here to listen and document whatever you're comfortable sharing." Over the next few days, I immersed myself in the history of the Deepwater Horizon. The rig had been at the forefront of offshore drilling technology, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in the oil industry. But ambition came at a steep price. On April 20th, 2010, everything changed. A series of mechanical failures and human errors led to a massive explosion, claiming the lives of 11 workers and causing one of the largest oil spills in history. The aftermath left the rig abandoned, yet reports of strange occurrences persisted. Workers returning from maintenance often spoke of inexplicable noises, shadowy figures, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Determined to get to the bottom of these haunting tales, I prepared for a night of investigation on the rig itself. Equipped with my camera, audio recorder, and a sturdy flashlight, I boarded the vessel under the cover of dusk. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the scent of saltwater and lingering oil, a constant reminder of the disaster. The rig creaked and groaned as it swayed with the restless waves, each movement amplifying the eerie silence that enveloped the structure. My first night was uneventful, filled with the hum of generators and the distant sounds of marine life. As midnight approached, I decided to explore the lower decks where the explosion had taken place. The corridors were dimly lit, the flickering lights casting long, unsettling shadows on the steel walls. Every step I took echoed through the empty halls, heightening my senses. Suddenly, a faint cry for help pierced the silence, sending chills down my spine. I froze, listening intently. The sound was followed by the unmistakable thud of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving swiftly down the corridor. My heart raced as I followed the noises, camera at the ready. As I turned a corner, the temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the beam of my flashlight. There, at the end of the hall, stood a figure, tall and imposing, dressed in the uniform of a maintenance worker. His face was obscured by shadows, but his presence was undeniable. He stared directly at me, his eyes hollow and pleading. "Help us," he whispered, his voice echoing through the empty corridor. Before I could respond, the figure began to fade, dissolving into the darkness as the oppressive atmosphere intensified. Panic surged through me, but curiosity held me in place. I continued my exploration, documenting every strange occurrence, every unexplained phenomenon. In the center of the rig, I discovered the control room, the heart of the disaster. The walls were scarred by flames, and the remnants of shattered equipment lay scattered across the floor. As I sifted through the debris, I found a battered journal, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. Picking it up, I began to read the desperate entries of Dr. Michael Thompson, the lead engineer responsible for overseeing the drilling operations. His writings detailed the mounting pressure to meet production targets, the sleepless nights, and the growing concerns over the rig's stability. As the days wore on, his entries became increasingly frantic, documenting the mechanical failures and the looming sense of impending doom. The final entry was a chilling plea for help, written just hours before the explosion, a silent testament to the horror that was about to unfold. A sudden gust of wind extinguished my flashlight, plunging me into complete darkness. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me with voices of anguish and despair. I fumbled for my backup light, the fear now palpable. When the light flickered back on, Dr. Thompson stood before me, his expression one of profound sorrow. "Remember us," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "Don't let our stories fade into the abyss." Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded, understanding the weight of his plea. I spent the next few hours documenting everything, capturing the essence of the rig's tragic history and the restless spirits that still lingered within its walls. As dawn broke, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, replaced by a sense of peace. Leaving Deepwater Horizon that morning, I felt a profound connection to the place and its history. The documentary I created not only preserved the stories of those who suffered and died within its walls, but also honored their restless spirits, giving them the remembrance they so desperately sought. Months later, the documentary, Echoes of Deepwater Horizon, was released to critical acclaim. Viewers were moved by the raw emotion and the palpable sense of loss that permeated the film. Some even claimed to feel a chill or the sensation of being watched when watching it, as if the spirits of Dr. Thompson and his crew were still present, grateful for the recognition and the peace that finally came with their stories being told. In the end, I realized that some places hold memories too powerful to be forgotten. Deepwater Horizon was more than just an abandoned oil rig, it was a sanctuary for souls longing to be remembered. And through my lens, their voices would echo through time, ensuring that their stories and their spirits would never fade into the shadows. Story number 7. Echoes of the Deep. I've always been drawn to places where the veil between the living and the dead seems thin, where the whispers of the past linger like fog over a forgotten landscape. So when I received an invitation to document the haunting tales surrounding the Deepwater Horizon oil rig, I knew I had to seize the opportunity. As a freelance journalist specializing in unsolved mysteries and paranormal phenomena, the rig's tragic history and the stories of lost souls made it the perfect subject for my next investigation. Arriving in the dead of night, the rig loomed ominously against the darkened horizon, its skeletal structure a stark contrast to the calm waters below. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the scent of salt water and the lingering aftermath of the disaster that had once rattled the world. The crew had assembled a small team of locals and experts, all eager to uncover the truth behind the eerie reports that had plagued the area since the catastrophe. Our base was a makeshift camp set up on a nearby island, the sound of waves crashing against the shore providing a constant, rhythmic backdrop. As I unpacked my equipment, including cameras, audio recorders, and notepads, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The stories I had heard were chilling, maintenance workers claiming to hear desperate cries for help, footsteps echoing through empty corridors, and shadows flitting just beyond the edge of vision. The first day was spent surveying the site, interviewing former employees, and piecing together the timeline of events leading up to the explosion. Most dismissed the paranormal claims as mere figments of traumatized minds, but a few seasoned workers hinted at unexplained phenomena that couldn't be easily dismissed. One old technician, eyes hollow with memories, recounted how the night of the disaster had changed everything. They say the souls of those who didn't make it are still here, trapped between the rig and the ocean. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, you can hear them calling out, trying to find their way back. As night fell, we gathered in the main control room, now a shell of its former self, with shattered glass and twisted metal telling the tale of that fateful day. I set up my cameras and audio equipment, determined to capture any signs of the supernatural. The darkness seemed to close in around us, the only light emanating from our flickering screens and the distant glow of the moon reflecting off the water. Hours passed in uneasy silence until the clock struck midnight. That's when I heard it, a faint, desperate cry echoing through the empty halls. My heart raced as I glanced around, trying to locate the source. The sound was followed by the unmistakable thud of heavy footsteps pacing just out of sight. I reached for my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, but the corridor remained empty. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped sharply, my breath visible in the chill air. The whispers began again, softer this time, like a lullaby sung by unseen lips. I strained to listen, catching fragments of words: help us, find us, remember us. The atmosphere was thick with sorrow and longing, the weight of countless untold stories pressing down on me. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I followed the sounds down a narrow corridor, my flashlight flickering intermittently. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, guiding me towards room 217, a chamber that had become infamous among the locals for its intense paranormal activity. The door stood slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, a gust of icy wind swept through the room, extinguishing my flashlight. In the sudden darkness, I felt a presence pressing against me, the sensation of invisible hands pulling me closer to the bed. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my backup light, managing to flick it on just in time to see a figure materialize before me. It was a man, his face etched with anguish, eyes hollow and pleading. He reached out a hand, fingertips barely brushing my arm. "Remember us," he whispered, his voice a haunting echo that reverberated through the room. I stumbled back, my mind racing to make sense of what I was witnessing. The air was thick with the scent of burnt metal and the lingering trauma of the explosion. Another figure appeared, a woman with tear-streaked cheeks, her presence equally sorrowful. "They never left," she cried, her voice cracking with emotion. "We're still here, waiting." As the spirit spoke, the room seemed to shift, images of the disaster playing out before my eyes, flames engulfing the rig, screams piercing the night, lives lost in an instant. The realization hit me hard. The souls trapped here were reliving their final moments, unable to move on, bound by the tragedy that had unfolded around them. Desperate to help, I spoke softly, trying to offer solace. "I'm here to listen. Tell me your stories." The spirits hesitated, their forms flickering like fading memories. Slowly, they began to recount their experiences, the fear, the confusion, the unbearable pain of losing everything in the blink of an eye. Their voices intertwined with the ambient sounds of the rig, creating a symphony of sorrow that filled the room. As I listened, I felt a connection form between us, a shared understanding of loss and the longing for peace. Determined to honor their memories, I vowed to document their stories, to ensure that their voices were heard and their lives remembered. Days turned into nights as I delved deeper into the mysteries of the Deepwater Horizon. Each encounter with the spirits revealed more about their lives and the events leading up to the disaster. The rig itself seemed to hold its breath, the lines between the living and the dead blurring with each passing moment. One particularly stormy night, as lightning illuminated the sky and thunder rumbled in the distance, the spirits grew more restless. The room shook with the force of the storm, the sounds of crashing waves and howling wind merging with the voices of the lost. In the midst of the chaos, the spirits gathered around me, their collective presence overwhelming. "We need closure," they implored, their voices rising above the storm's fury. "Help us find peace." Realizing the depth of their anguish, I knew that mere documentation wasn't enough. I needed to find a way to help them move on, to release the heavy burden they carried. With the help of a local medium, we conducted a seance in the heart of the rig, channeling the spirit's energy and offering them a pathway to the afterlife. As we spoke words of comfort and remembrance, the air grew still, the storm outside mirroring the tumult within. One by one, the spirits began to fade, their expressions softening as they found the peace they had long sought. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a serene calm that settled over the rig. The following morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the rig's remnants. The sense of sorrow had dissipated, replaced by a feeling of closure and hope. The spirits had been freed, their stories preserved and honored. Leaving the Deepwater Horizon, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Not only had I uncovered the truth behind the haunting phenomena, but I had also played a part in helping restless souls find peace. My experience on the rig became the foundation of my most compelling piece yet, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the importance of remembering those who had been lost. Months later, my article, Echoes of the Deep, was published, shedding light on the dark history of the Deepwater Horizon and the spirits that had haunted it for years. Readers were moved by the raw emotion and the haunting visuals I had captured, many expressing a newfound respect for the forgotten souls of the rig. The story not only captivated audiences, but also sparked conversations about the importance of honoring and remembering those who had suffered in silence. The Deepwater Horizon remains a symbol of both human ambition and the tragic consequences that can follow. Its legacy is now intertwined with the stories of the spirits who once called it home, their whispers a reminder of the lives lost and the importance of remembrance. Whenever I pass by the remnants of the rig, I feel a lingering presence, a connection to the past and a reminder that some echoes, no matter how faint, are powerful enough to transcend the boundaries of life and death. In the end, my journey to the Deepwater Horizon was more than just an investigation. It was a voyage of empathy and understanding, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a reminder that some places hold memories too powerful to be forgotten. By giving these lost souls a voice, I not only honored their memories, but also found a deeper connection to my own humanity, ensuring that their suffering was never in vain. Whenever I sit down to write, I think back to those nights aboard the rig, the whispers of the past guiding my pen, reminding me that some stories are worth telling, no matter how dark they may be.